I, 27, female, first met my fiancé, 28, male, at a music festival. He was with his group of friends and I was with mine. We got to talking about our favorite musicians and bands, and before we both knew it, we had become friends. It was a week-long event, and I was having a hard time walking away from him because of how much I liked him. So, when he suggested that we stay together for the entirety of the festival, I immediately said yes. He sort of merged our group of friends and decided to attend all the events together as one big group. It was quite nice. We all had a lot in common with each other since we were all from the same city. It wasn't awkward or anything, and everyone seemed to enjoy themselves with the new group of friends that we had made. I had never believed in love at first sight before I met him. It was almost alarming to me how much I liked him and how much I wanted to spend time with him. I was dreading the end of the music festival because I knew I would have to say goodbye to him. I didn't want to freak him out by telling him how I was feeling because we had known each other for merely 5 days, so I kept my mouth shut. It turns out he was feeling the same way because he came up to me and said that he would hate not to see me again. And he too was dreading the end of the festival. I was a goner when he confessed that. I honestly could have cried. I told him that I would absolutely love to see him after this and that I was feeling the same way as him. We were both relieved after we established that there wouldn't be a goodbye at the end of that week. We all exchanged numbers, the whole group, because everyone wanted to hang out after we went to the city. We also exchanged addresses, and while my fiancé's place was a little farther away from mine, some of his friends were closer to my place. So, all in all, we both knew that it wouldn't be a hardship at all to find a way to stay in touch with each other. As soon as we went home from the festival, I received a call from him and he asked me out on a date. I was so happy that he didn't even wait a few days before asking me out. We went on a few dates and I was pleasantly surprised that the magic was not gone after the music festival, and we both still very much liked each other. A few dates turned into a lot more, and before we knew it, we were in a committed relationship. I had become more familiar with his friend too, as he had become with mine. We often hung out with each other's friends and places. Even though he had a huge group of friends, we often ended up hanging out with his best friend and his girlfriend. We went out on double dates with them a lot of times. I could see that the three of them were really close because they had all grown up together. They still never made me feel like an outsider. They welcomed me into their small circle with open arms, and because I knew it, it was the four of us who formed an inner circle of sorts apart from all our other friends. It was so pleasant because I never had friends so close that they were almost family. His best friend had been with his girlfriend ever since their school days, and it was such a nice, wholesome little love story that I felt myself tear up when they told me. My fiancé, on the other hand, had grumbled about being their third wheel all his life, and I burst out laughing. I had then assured him that he wouldn't be anyone's third wheel any longer. His eyes had shone with sincerity when he told me that he loved me, and I had repeated the same to him. I knew from the very beginning that he was the man I would spend my life with. So even though I thought we were going a little fast, I never really panicked about the big life decisions. We had moved in together after dating for 11 months. It was a first for me. I had never shared a home with any of my previous partners, but I jumped when he asked me and said yes immediately. I had this nagging voice in the back of my mind telling me that it was all going really fast and that I should put a stop to it, but I had paid it no mind. My fiancé's best friend and his girlfriend helped us move, and they were the first people we entertained in our new home. It was a cozy evening with just us and some takeout, but something had changed during the day. I didn't know what it was, but his best friend's girlfriend was acting all aloof. She was being unusually quiet, and I remember wondering if she was having problems in her relationship. She had barely said a word all night and seemed visibly sad. Even though we were great friends, I didn't urge her to confide in me since I was also friends with her boyfriend. I was sure she would talk to some of her friends who wouldn't be biased. Since I knew she was uncomfortable, I decided to end the evening early, and they were on their way home before the clock even hit 9. I did ask my fiance if he knew what was going on with them, but he didn't know anything. He assured me that it was probably nothing and they would figure it out like they always do. They had been together for way too long to not figure it out, he had said, and I believed him because he knew them way better than me. Things were a little hectic initially when we moved in, but after we got used to living together, it was beyond pleasant. I loved living with him. It brought me so much joy to do little everyday things like laundry or cooking with him. All my previous doubts about moving too fast were put to an end after we got comfortable living together. I knew we were going in the right direction, even if it had been a little quick. We had continued our double dates, opting for staying in instead of going out most of the time. His best friend's girlfriend hadn't seemed uncomfortable or sad after that initial day, so I guess they had sorted out whatever was bothering her. It was back to normal for the four of us. We grew even closer in the following months. I even invited her to a girls' night with my other friends. I knew that a proposal was coming way before my fiance popped the question. We had talked about it a few times and decided that we were ready for it. It still made me cry when it happened, though. Of course I said yes. We told his best friend and his girlfriend, and they came over for dinner that day. He was super happy, but she was a little quiet. I started to think that maybe she had a problem with me, but then I realized how self-centered it sounded. Maybe she really had some problems and couldn't show her happiness to us. She did tell us congratulations, but she was not happy, as I could tell. I thought about talking to her, but in the following days it slipped my mind. We told our parents, our other friends and I got mixed up in the calls and messages from friends and family. After that, I was so excited to start the wedding prep that everything went to the back of my mind. I didn't even think that something might be going on behind my back that I should be aware of. I just trusted easily. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I didn't pay attention to something that was happening right in front of my eyes. I got too comfortable in my life because I thought I was safe and my fiance would never let anything happen to me. Boy, was I wrong about that. Between our proposal and the date we decided for our wedding, we didn't hang out much with his best friend and his girlfriend like we usually did. My fiance told me that they were having relationship problems, so it was best that we didn't hang out with them for a while. I was busy with the wedding prep anyway, so I didn't have any problem with that. As our wedding day came near, my fiancé became a little distant, but he never confided in me whenever I asked him. I thought maybe he was nervous or had cold feet, so I let it go. He had assured me that he was completely all right and that I had nothing to worry about. I went back to wedding planning, and then my whole world turned upside down on the day of my wedding. I was in the bridal suite all morning getting ready. We obviously weren't supposed to see each other, but I texted him, which I never got a reply to. I didn't think much of it, but as the ceremony came close, I was getting restless. I just wanted to hear his voice to calm myself down, so I called him and found that his phone was off. It was odd. Why would his phone be off right before our wedding? I texted him and then saw that my texts weren't going through. I checked my phone and everything, and then I texted my friend, who replied immediately, so my phone was working fine. I just couldn't understand what was going on, but I still didn't just jump to any conclusions. The red flag started flying when his best friend knocked on my door looking very distressed. I invited him in, but he was too silent for my liking. I asked him what was going on and why he looked like someone had run a car over him. He told me that my fiancé was gone. I actually laughed at his face because he sounded ridiculous. Why would my fiancé leave when we were supposed to be married in less than an hour? He told me to sit down. I sat, and then he handed me an envelope. I took it from him with shaky hands and opened it to find a letter. It was from my fiancé and was addressed to me and his best friend both. He sat next to me as we read it together. He started off by saying sorry, like it would make it all better. He wrote that he had been in love with his best friend's girlfriend for a long time, and she finally accepted that there was something between them too, so they ran off together. He wrote how they were seeing each other behind our backs and made a pact to dump their respective partners to see where they could take their relationship. He wrote that they weren't going to act on the pact, but he couldn't go through with the wedding when he was in love with someone else. He couldn't do that to the actual love of his life. I had tears streaming down my face by this point. His best friend was sitting right next to me, holding my trembling body for comfort. He told me to flip the page, so I did. The pact was written on the back, and there were 2 signs. It was ridiculous that they actually wrote it down. It was the usual bullshit that they couldn't live without each other and it wouldn't have been right if they continued their previous relationship. The last sentence was the one that got me, though. They wrote that he thought me and his best friend would make a great couple, and we should consider getting married instead because he didn't want my wedding planning to go to waste. He also wrote that he didn't want us to suffer so we could help each other through our breakup. The audacity of that man was astounding. I was heartbroken and helpless, but above all, I was enraged. He did this to me and had the gall to tell me that I should marry his best friend. He pulled his shit on our wedding day and then was trying to act like he cared about me and his best friend. I tried to call him again, but his best friend told me that he had blocked us both. I just didn't know what to do anymore. I mean, what can one do after their life turns into the daily soap? I just kept thinking back to all the times I suspected something and then let it go. Was it my foolishness that got the best of me? Should I have done something differently so my life wouldn't be a complete shambles? Update 1. I hibernated for almost 3 months after my wedding fiasco. I didn't want to face anyone. I felt so stupid. My friends mostly left me alone to lick my wounds. It was horrible. Heartbreak is horrible. I cried myself to sleep every night. I tried to call him again and again, but I was still blocked. I just wanted some answers. I was going crazy thinking that maybe I should have done something differently and we wouldn't be here right now. I kept blaming myself because I didn't get any closer. He left without facing me like a coward. I didn't get to see what he was thinking while he was writing that godforsaken letter. Did he feel bad about dumping me like this? Or was he super happy? So he started his new life with the actual love of his life? Oh, these unanswered questions kept eating me alive until I was in complete isolation. I didn't pick up any calls from my family or friends. I even started skipping work because I couldn't get myself to concentrate on anything. It was honestly getting out of hand how awful I was feeling. Then suddenly one day I went home from work to find my fiancé's best friend sitting on my porch. I didn't know what to do. We had been great friends for a while, but I hadn't seen him or talked to him since my wedding day. He asked to come in, so I let him in. He didn't push me to talk or anything. He just sat there and had coffee with me in comfortable silence. Even after that, he didn't bring up the elephant in the room. He simply told me that he was worried about me and how I was isolating myself. It wasn't healthy, and he insisted that we start our dinners or game nights again. It was such a ridiculous idea. We used to do that with them before they both betrayed us. He told me that we don't need anyone to have dinner and play some games. 2 people are enough. Maybe I was too lonely, or maybe he looked really lonely. I don't know what it was, but I ended up saying yes. It was time I started seeing him as my friend and not my fiancé's best friend. He was my friend, and I was allowed to have dinner with my friend, so that's what we did that night. We had dinner, played silly games, and didn't talk about the other 2. Update 2. Hi guys. To answer your questions, yes, I have become very close friends with my ex's ex-best friend. Wow, that is a mouthful. We had dinners and game nights for almost 6 months, just the two of us, before he finally asked me out on a date. I had started liking him, but I didn't know if he felt the same way, so I kept my mouth shut until he asked me out himself. I said yes to a date with him. He and I had become very close in the last 6 or so months because we understood what each other was going through. We were heartbroken together and we sort of healed each other, and it was only natural that we moved on together, too. We did hang out with our other friends, and none of them knew exactly what was going on with us. We were the only two people who fully understood. I was actually pretty happy that I was finally moving on, and that too with this great guy who had become a very close friend of mine. The whole broken engagement and getting stood up on my wedding day was an awful experience. And I didn't think I would be able to move on from it. I went to such a dark place after my ex fiance left me that I never thought I would ever be able to go out on a date like a normal person. We had talked about our exes in the last 6 months and how it all affected us. There were a lot of fears. He confided in me too, how he lost both of his girlfriend and friend in a day. It was almost cathartic for both of us to talk about it. Getting our feelings out in the open and sharing them with each other was what eventually helped us move on from them. He took me out to a nice dinner. I honestly thought it would be awkward, but it felt so natural. We had been having dinner together for a while, but switching from friendship to dating didn't feel forced at all. We were both so comfortable in each other's presence, and it was honestly the best date of my life. We ate and we laughed. It was perfect. He felt the same way too because he wanted to take me out again and was equally happy that we had found each other even after the chaos that was our life not so long ago. Update 3. So my ex contacted me, and also I've made things official with my new boyfriend. So we finally made it official. We didn't make it official until after we had been dating for almost 3 months. We didn't want to rush into anything like I did before with my ex-fiancé. I was kind of scared to have a boyfriend again after I had such a bad experience the last time, but he wore me down. I can't believe I used to see him as my ex-fiancé's best friend all this time while he was my friend too. And now he was my boyfriend. I was almost embarrassed that I didn't see him that way until he asked me out. I was actually really happy with my life. We were very far in the past. We worked through our problems together, so it wasn't creating any problems between us anymore. He even joked about how we made my ex-fiance's wishes come true because he told us that we would make a great couple in his letter. We were at the point where we could laugh about our past. We were not heartbroken anymore, and I think both of us played a huge part in healing each other from the scars that our exes left. We told our friends and family too, and they were really happy for us. I couldn't have been happier even after what happened to us, and then it all came to a crashing halt when I got a call from my ex-fiancé. I had deleted his number after our breakup, so I didn't know who was calling when I picked up. It was a shock to hear his voice after so long. I froze for a good 5 minutes before I got enough courage to pay attention to what he was saying. He was going on about how happy he was that I picked up his call, how much he missed me, and how sorry he was for leaving like that. I listened for a few minutes without saying anything, and then I hung up. I couldn't bring myself to say anything to him, and I didn't want to have a conversation with him anyway, so I cut the call before he could say anything else. After I got myself under control, I immediately called my boyfriend and told him everything. After I went home and saw my boyfriend, he too told me that he received a call from my ex-fiancé. He didn't talk to him either, he just hung up. I just didn't know why he was trying to barge into our lives again after all this time. I was finally happy. I didn't want his presence in our lives anymore, and it was making me anxious. Update 4. My boyfriend and I did talk about the phone call a few times. We didn't know what he wanted. Why was he calling us now after all of this? but the following weeks we sort of got over that. He didn't call after that, so we thought maybe he got the hint that he didn't want anything to do with him. Then he showed up at my place out of nowhere. It was like a slap in the face when I saw him standing there looking hopeful. I didn't know what to say to him. He just stood there for a while before he finally said hi. Since I was taking a long time, my boyfriend came out to see what was keeping me. Then it got way more uncomfortable than before. My ex's expression went from hopeful to confused to painful in a matter of seconds. He figured out what was happening. What did he expect? I will be waiting for him to make an appearance. He asked if he could come in, and my boyfriend told him no. He was getting angry too, so I calmed him down. I cared about my boyfriend out of the two of them, and I didn't want him to get angry over my ex. I understood that he was his ex-best friend too, and his face brought back painful memories for him too. We took a moment to calm ourselves before we continued the conversation. My ex was still waiting for us to let him in, but I told him that we didn't want anything to do with him and that he should leave. I said that he was sorry for what he did, but he was back now. He was doing us a favor by being back. He left us both heartbroken, and now he wanted to just forgive him for showing up. When he got that we wouldn't let him in, he started talking, standing at our door. He said that she left him. We got who she was. He told us that they couldn't make their relationship work, and he regrets leaving us both. He told us that he needed his friends back, and I reminded him that I wasn't his friend. He said that it was a mistake, and he shouldn't have done that to us. My boyfriend could see how anxious and uncomfortable I was getting, so he stepped up. He told him that we were finally happy without dating, and my boyfriend told him yes. He had the audacity to look hurt after that, like we had hurt him. We told him that we wanted him to leave and not call or text anymore. We weren't his friends, and we won't ever be his friends in the future, so the best thing he could do for us now is to leave us alone. He got the message loud and clear after that, but he didn't let go of the chance of being nasty one last time. He told me that I didn't waste any chance to bag his best friend and move on fairly quickly for someone who was heartbroken. It was like he slapped me in the face. My boyfriend told him that at least one couple should adhere to his so-called pact, since the cheaters couldn't make it work. He told me that we were just playing by his rules. That shut him up, and he left with his head hung low. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hope to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.